Today I want to talk about something that probably seems like a bit of a dirty trick or hack, although really this whole series could be just renamed How to Think Like a Horn Player, because horn players are hustlers, whereas guitarists are nerds. This is the most important thing to remember. It's the nature of the instrument. We've got these strings, and we've got to deal with harmony and shapes and diagrams, and that's naturally nerdy stuff. Horn players, on the other hand, blow through their instruments and make a big noise, and they play melodies, so they naturally find a way to hustle their way through things. So, for instance, horn players find it much easier to fake tunes, okay? And guitarists. Obviously, guitarists have to worry about chords, but I've always envied that ability that horn players have to basically just cheat at music, and I've always wanted to be able to cheat at music better than myself. So that has been something I've looked at over the past few years, I guess. Here we are, the nerdy Orphic types with our guitars, and we want to be more like the Dionysian horn players. Well, the thing about the horn players is that they're able to actually do this thing where they can just play a tune, and the whole sound of the instrument kind of pushes everybody out of the way. So if you've got a great sound on tenor sax, you don't need to worry about whether you're playing the changes right or not. So that is in their favour. But I think one thing that we can learn from horn players is that actually sometimes it's just really good to practice playing diatonically over changes. Now, this might seem a bit weird, right? Because we spend so much of our time sort of learning how to play the chord changes. You know, we learn how to express the changes in our line, okay, as well as in our chords. And we spend so much time doing that to learn how to do it effectively, so we can communicate harmony, outline changes, and that's all great stuff. But what I want to say is that actually, if you look at the melodies of many of the standards, they don't necessarily describe the harmony in great detail. Some do, like Just Friends, Darn That Dream, Someday My Prince Will Come. They're all melodies that really have something to say about the harmony. But some just kind of sit on top. For instance, After You've Gone just kind of sits on top. Beatrice is mostly just a tune in F major, despite the interesting chords that go on underneath it. At the end it kind of changes to minor a little bit. Stella by Starlight doesn't really have many chromatic notes in it, and yet all these tunes have quite challenging changes, you know? Often the more challenging the changes are, like a tune like Moment's Notice, for instance, the more diatonic a tune will be. Moment's Notice is mostly a tune in E flat major. At the end it has a little G flat major arpeggio at the end of the first half, but you know. Sort of that, isn't it? You know, so it's mostly E flat major, but then there's a little modulation at the end. But you know, you certainly don't get a sense of all this. Stuff going on in the harmony part. So that made me think, okay, so maybe actually one really nice thing to do would be to practice just playing in one key over a tune. So for instance, if I've got Just Friends going on, I just play entirely out of the G major scale. Okay. To do this effectively really requires you to use your ears. Theoretically, we might be aware, so for instance, in Just Friends, the first chromatic chord we come across is depending on what version of the changes you're looking at, is either C minor or F7, right? So we really want to stay off the, off the note E in that situation. For instance, you know that another chromatic chord it comes to later is there's this 2-5, A flat, B flat minor, E flat 7, which I tend to just look at A flat 7, and that's got that sort of, obviously a few chromatic notes, but you can also find that like the 13th is diatonic, the 3rd is also diatonic, so you can land on that note. So there's usually, without wanting to make it too theoretical, there's usually like 1 or 2 diatonic notes you can find in most chords to sit on. So actually, practicing this by ear is a really, really good way to just play using your ears. And then, of course, once you've got that together, you can start to add in the chromatics as well. But I think, like, for instance, if I start this off, this is Just Friends, right? It's using mostly the G major triad. So you've got to be careful with the sixth now. So, second. So, fourth is nice here. Non-diatonic there. So, one thing I noticed is that the tonic triad sounds greater than most things. Doesn't sound great with this one. C sounds good, some of that. So, hit some clamps now. Yeah. But sorry, what I wanted to sort of say in that is that actually your clams, when you do hit, like, for instance, an E over a C minor chord, they don't actually sound that bad, because in a minute you're going to move to a diatonic chord. And this relates to the whole sort of thing I have about movement, right? These chords naturally a resolution to G major. So you can just hear that E is a massive anticipation of G major. G major 13 or G major 6. Okay? In a similar way, you know, this kind of E flat chord here, E flat 7. It's just kind of moving down to that 2/5, A minor D7. So again, you know, you can kind of ignore them. So I would say probably Just Friends is actually a fairly kind of, you know, chromatic-y tune from the point of view of the harmony. Perhaps another example that I could use might be something like rhythm changes. A lot of people are frightened of rhythm changes, so it seems like always good to provide strategies to help people get through it. So I'm just going to. So this is B flat major, right? Now that's where it doesn't work so well. just a bit of fun. Now the challenge is doing it over the bridge of rhythm changes, because in general rhythm changes is generally associated like there's a separate kind of scale that you put over each of these chords, and most versions of rhythm changes right from the early days have that as a concept. You know, it might be a major pentatonic, for instance. But you know, to play over that diatonically from the B flat major scale requires, you know, a little bit more kind of cleverness. For instance, A works over B7, and also, I mean, now technically I suppose in diatonics it's a sharp 11th, but there's no reason why you couldn't use that for a flat 9. Okay, so I mean, I think that's really good way of practicing this, to use your ears a bit more, and also it can help you sort of just play a lot more melodically, because obviously the ear keys into the major scale or the minor scale or whatever very quickly. Obviously it's quite nice to, you'll notice that I played this line at the start, and you might say, oh, that's a bit chromatic, that doesn't really fit our rules, but actually it's not that chromatic. So I'm using some information there from the F dominant scale, which is of course diatonic to B flat major, so I'm using a little bit of a bebop line. Now of course you've got the option within the B flat, you know, scale to use an E flat major or an E flat major 7th or a D, an F7 arpeggio, maybe a G minor or a C minor, all of which create a little bit more movement. Triads on 1/4. This, you know, for instance, Thelonious Monk. What's the name of the tune? Rhythming, you know, for instance. But in that case, it's mixed up with the blues. So if you mix it up with the blues, you actually have a lot of potential for expression. Let me just just play that for you so you can hear how it sounds. You've got potential there to kind of, you know, start a solo off simply, perhaps, you know, and then embellish it later on, get a bit more busy and a bit more complex. Another thing I like to do is just start to introduce the chromatics of the key. So this is a very key-centric approach. So for B flat major, for instance, you know, we have this B flat, we have the flat 6, okay? There's a lot you can do with the flat 6. This would be the major 6th diminished scale of Barry Harris. This is a little bit more movement, a little bit more poetry perhaps to the key. And also just the minor as well. My major 6th diminished scale is endlessly fascinating. Just by adding an extra note to it, you suddenly add all these possibilities in. So let's give that a go. Anyway. The sharp 1 on the flat 2. Flat 2 coming up. And there's a bit of that. So, So one thing I notice like improvisers like Lester Young do a lot is they create movement. They go like that kind of thing. So it's a bit Latin in that context, but maybe adding a bit of blues. So that's kind of like one way you could do it. So you know, one thing I'm doing there, just drawing out you know, just like adding an extra chromatic note in between those, that third and that seventh. So I think that's an alternative model of how to build up jazz changes playing, and I hope you find that useful and interesting. It's just a bit of a different way. Thanks for watching.